presenters come up real quick. Until about 5 years ago, I thought there was one type of 1031 exchange. One tool, we're all familiar with it, it's hard to do. And it wasn't until I got more experience and really spent a lot of time with Michael. We've known each other 20 years. And really understanding there's lots of different types of exchanges. And if you're going to roll up your properties, you're gonna have a big world, you're gonna need to understand the different tools available. Again, go back in your wealth journey. You know, I used to believe that I was gonna have 1,000 single family houses. I didn't know that you could 1031 exchange into natural gas royalties. I didn't know all these different ideas and concepts, velocity of money, how to use your life insurance policy. I didn't know all these things. So we've got to learn all the tools so we can get better outcomes. So I want to give you a big KW Wealth welcome to Michael Velasco and Bradley Chase for their case study. Michael, take it away, do your thing.
Thank you guys. As Brooks telling the others, many different types of exchanges. Today we're going to be talking about one, and there's check. 1, 2. Maybe check. I got to have that mic on. That's the first thing is you got to switch that switch. So there are several different types of exchanges. There's probably 100 of them, and we're going to go over one type today, where Bradley went in from 1 relinquished property to 3 replacement properties. Lots of motivations for that. Bradley's going to get into it, but I think it's really important to know, hey, there's a ton of different types of exchanges that you can do, and this is one case study of it. So I'm going to let Bradley kind of get going here on his. Here we go. Whoa, we went a little too far. Here we go.
So we had a property in St. Petersburg. It was performing okay, but you know, taxes and insurance in Florida have just gone through the roof, so our cash flow was down. We had a great equity position on it, so we decided we would sell it and do a 1031. And this was our second or third 1031 we did with Michael. And what was interesting about this one is we bought 3 properties and we used 3 different styles to buy them. One of the properties that we bought was a cash purchase. We bought that one. We bought a turnkey property that the seller actually allowed us to fill the vacancies with our own people while we were pending. So we did that on a duplex. And the third, and what really blew my mind, is we did a contract for deed and purchased the property through the 1031 on the contract for deed that I was already negotiating, and I was going to come out of pocket to buy that property, but I was able to use the exchange. And Michael really set that up for us and made sure all the I's were dotted and T's were crossed, and we've come up with a lot more cash flow out of these 3 properties and value.
Yeah, we're going to go under the hood on a contract for deed here in a little bit, but I'll get granular with a contract for deed and a 1031 exchange. But let's look at the relinquished property, Brad.
Sure. So that property, we sold it for $238,000. It was rented for $1,950. Our debt service on it was roughly $100,000 on it, and the taxes and insurance were just brutal. So, you know, the hurricane, we had the 2 back-to-back hurricanes, and all the trees seemed to have fallen on this house. So our tenant, who was long-term on it, she had to move because the power lines went down and the electric company shut down our power. We couldn't get power back on it for a while, so we lost a 10-year tenant, and we looked at it and said, let's sell it at that point. So we cleaned it up, put a new roof on it, cleaned up the damage from literally all the trees in the neighborhood seemed to have fallen on that one house. So that was our relinquished property.
The relinquished property, you sold it for $238,000. You were getting $1,950 in rent. Did you have debt on this?
Yeah, it was about $100,000 in debt.
$100,000 in debt, so you're cash flowing it. Do you remember what you were cash flowing on this one?
Cash flow on that was about $400 a month.
About $400 a month. Okay.
Yeah.
So you decide, hey, we want to increase monthly cash flow. Obviously, we want to diversify against multiple assets and improve long-term stability income, right? So those are the objectives.
Yep.
And then this is, so we bought 3 replacement properties, right? So let's walk them through your thought process, Bradley, on like, number 1, how did you find this property?
A wholesaler brought it to us.
Yep. So break us down. What you did?
So this property was $35,000, and it was tenant occupied. At the time, it was I think $850 but she was behind in rents. We got the owner to actually remove it. He wasn't the smartest wholesaler. He allowed us a lot of flexibility for us. We bought this one and the duplex through the same wholesaler and financed the duplex. So he had it marked wrong. He had it as a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and he had it out for $35,000. It was really a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. He never saw it. He was a virtual wholesaler, so he didn't even know what he had. We had boots on the ground who went and walked through the property, so we knew he had a good property at a great price.
Good price. So renting it for $1,000 a month now. You purchased it for $35,000. I mean, this is, I don't know. Like we always use the 1% rule in real estate, right? If you can, this is like 3% rule or 300% rule, I should say, of rent to value here. Next property on Oates.
Yeah, this property was the duplex, and it was actually a double wholesale deal. The wholesaler that brought it to us locked it up from another guy, and the guy did all the work on the house, and he just needed to get out of it because he had a balloon coming up, and he was about to lose everything. So we stepped in and we said, we'll buy it, but I need to finance it, and I'll get you closed in 3 weeks. And he said, sure. And at the same time, he allowed us to fill the vacancy. And one of the stipulations with the vacancy, we had a group that allowed the people to come in. It's guaranteed income. It was a subsidy income, but we had to put appliances in it. So I told him, I said, hey, you allow me to fill the vacancy. I'll put the appliances in even before we close. If it falls apart, you have brand new appliances or new to you appliances. And he said, sure. So we ended up having to push back a month on it. There was a little hiccup on their side with title. So we ended up collecting the month for the first month before we closed, and then the second month we already had by the time of closing. And we filled it 100% subsidy at $950 per unit.
So this was it was a duplex then?
Yeah.
Okay. So $1,900. And then you got a mortgage on this?
I do.
Yeah.
So
was it seller financing?
no, this one was regular financing, DSCR loan on it. And the rate was a little bit higher than I wanted to go, but we had to move, quick to get it done. So PITI is $1,256, management fees is $133 a month, and we are net cash flow on it's $511
So
per month.
you went just on this one. You went up in the cash flow that you were making on the other one, right?
Yeah, more than the relinquished property just on this one.
Yeah, this is good. Okay, this is where things get spicy.
Yeah.
Let's see. This is the contract for deed one, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So walk us through this one. A little bit higher in purchase price.
Okay, so this one, we actually were renting this property from the owner, and the owner was one of my clients, and he decided he doesn't like real estate, and he would complain all the time. So I said, I'll buy the house from you. I had it on the market for sale before we went into it, and we have a sober living houses, and we filled the vacancy with one of our sober living homes. So we were renting it from him. I tried selling it before. The deal fell apart. It was $420,000 was my last pending contract. And I went to him and I said, I'll buy it, but I'm going to reduce commissions, and the market has shifted a little bit, so my price is $380 if you want it. And he said, sure. And I said, the way you can make back your money is you hold the note, we'll do a contract for deed, and over time you'll make back the money and you'll break even over time. And he liked that idea because he didn't want to lose any money. So we did it, and $23,313.88 bought that property.
Yep. It was, we'll get it. Let's go under the hood here in a second. But before we do that, I want to look at the purchase price, what your rent you received, your net income, your cash flow on this one.
Yeah, this one's pretty good. So with the sober living house, we charge by beds. So we have 7 rented beds and 1 house manager in there that lives for free. So 8 people between the 2 units. The front building pulls $3,400. The rear pulls $2,400 for a total rental income of $5,800. per month. The PITI is $26.94. We still have to manage it, so we pay the management company the management fees on the real estate of $406, and the cash flow on this one monthly is $2,700 a month.
So I got to ask, on the sober living, is this a pain to run from a human capital standpoint, and what you got to do to keep these things filled?
It's gotten better. I mean, we have good people within our organization. So we have a house manager. You know, we work on the business versus in the business.
Yep.
So, you know, just working with them and keeping them going on a monthly basis, weekly, daily basis with what they need allows them to take ownership of the position and keep the house full. And, you know, we have good camaraderie there. The people that are in our house, they like being there. Their lives have changed. They're much more positive in what they do. And
I kind of compare it to like the RV park thing, where you give somebody a space and you pay them $1,000 and they can live there for free, and they kind of manage the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's take a look at the big picture. Why a contract for deed? I'm going to go back to this one second. But ultimately, when you do a contract for deed, you're really getting a low, typically, down payment, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have to qualify through a bank, right? So that's some of the advantages of that.
Well, and also, it's not on my credit report. It doesn't show under my ownership unless you pull up the deed to the property, and you'll see my cloud on title. So I get the benefits of owning it.
Ownership.
Yeah.
So relinquished value was $238. This is just kind of the summary of the exchange, and I'm gonna go back to the contract for deed here in a second. Relinquished value is $238. Your replacement value was $580. You improved income. You went from previous rent to $1,950. Total net achieved is $1,870. Your cash flow achieved was $39.88. So that was a plus. What was your plus from going from the relinquished property to the replacement properties? Net income.
Net income between the three of them, we were almost $4,000.
Yes. So this is net income, $4,000. Yeah. Compared to what you were doing before, which was
Not for $400.
$400. So you turned $400 into $4,000
Yeah.
by doing an exchange. That's pretty amazing. Yeah. So let's go back. I want to go back and talk a little bit about the contract for deed. And I've got a visual aid, and Brett doesn't know I was going to talk about his old flipping days, textbook flipping days. I've known Brett for almost 20 years now, so I know a little bit more maybe than you guys might know about his business past. Brett, what was the most money you ever made flipping a textbook?
I flipped a textbook and made
$1,000. It might have been this book. So this book, and the reason why I bring it up, this is Tax-Free Exchanges. It was written by Jeremiah Long and Mary Foster. It's the textbook they use for LLMs. If you're in law school and you want a master's degree in taxation, this is the book you learn on 1031 exchanges. It's $2,000 to learn 1031 exchanges. So when I was taking my CES class, which is kind of like a CPA class for accountants, or taking the test, I had to basically memorize everything about this book inside and out. And I'm not really bragging, but what my point is this book has one paragraph on contract for deeds out of all of it. Seller financing isn't really something that they teach the accountants, teach the CPAs, teach the tax attorneys. But I knew we could do it, and I did lots of seller financing deals where the replacement property was bought on seller financing. It's really difficult to sell a relinquished property on seller financing. You really can't do it. But replacement properties, you can treat it, it's just treated just like any other loan. The seller is going to carry you. Well, what about if you don't take title? The deed stays in the seller's name, right? In this case, right? We didn't transfer the deed, right? So the IRS looks at these types of transactions, and it's a benefits and burdens test, right? Who has benefits and burdens of ownership, right? In this case, Brad, if the roof goes bad on the contract for deed, who's responsible?
Me.
You, right? The lawn, who mows the lawn?
Me.
Who gets the appreciation if the property appreciates?
Me.
You. So he's got all the benefits and burdens of ownership, right? And so when we were putting this together, Bradley calls me and goes, hey, I want a contract for deed. And I'm like, I know you can do it. I've done tons of seller financing, both on the relinquished and the replacement. I said, contract for deed, hold on. So, of course, I go to my textbook. I just refresh my memory. I'm like, there's one paragraph. And so I call my lead outside counsel, who's one of the best tax attorneys in the country. And I'm like, yes, I do contract for deeds all the time. And so at that point, I hooked him up with Brad, and I said, hey, if we're going to do this, I just want to make sure that the contract for deed, right, has got some language about benefits and burdens that will pass the litmus test. And so that's basically what we did, is we kind of went under the hood and we said, this is the way we can do it. And so contracts for deeds on replacement properties are a valuable tool. So is seller financing. You guys don't have to go out and buy and use a bank. You can use seller financing on it. So what was a couple of things I wanted to do? One, just if you're going to do them, make sure you have well-qualified counsel. Your CPA is probably not going to know, and that's okay. It doesn't make them a bad CPA. But them doing a contract for deed on a 1031 exchange is something that would happen maybe once in their career if they ever saw it, right? And so just making sure that you guys have qualified counsel and whatnot. But in this case, I think what we did was just get a little creative and got some killer cash flow out of this. So let's see what we have on the next slide. We kind of went over the summary there. Any questions? Does that spur anything that somebody might have a question about?
I will say,
Stun the crowd. I stunned the crowd with this.
You did. Well, that's why I'm going to say how great you are. Working with Michael, like when we started uncovering and discovering, and it got real exciting. Like I was like, wow, we could do this. And he's like, yeah. And then he brought in his counsel, and he got on the phone with my CPA, and we all, just got in on this, and we're like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And then we put it together. And, I've used other companies in the past. I'll never use anybody else for 1031s.
I appreciate that. I think the worst thing you can do in these scenarios is think you know what you're doing and not call qualified counsel and just do them. And I've had clients do 1031 exchange. I had a big exchange in Chicago where we did a TIC ownership, and the buyer would not bring anybody in. And he just wrote his own TIC deal where he basically chopped up percentage on a contract, took ownership, and I'm like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing. Let's just close the deal and hope this doesn't get audited. But, Brad's an excellent example. He's got a great CPA, and he asked a lot of questions, and if he doesn't know the answer, we go get it. So, yeah.
100%.
So my question, I think you answered it with not taking deed, but ultimately, when I first started hearing the story, question became of the LLC. So you sold your other property. Was that an LLC or a personal name?
This brings up an incredible discussion topic because it was an S corp.
Okay.
And Brad, do you mind if I tell the story? No.
Go ahead.
So Bradley's, he's like, hey, I got this property in this S corp, and I was like, oh boy. Yeah. So, all right. So I'm like, bring me the CPA, right? Let's talk about this. So it's not the worst thing in the world to have a property in an S corp, but it was in an S corp, filing an 1120 S corp return. So that was the taxpayer. We couldn't change it. So his S corp bought and sold, and Bradley's just going to deal with that for, we're just going to leave him in there. It's not really a huge deal, but we just can't ever take him out of the.
So the S corp ended up buying all three. Buying two properties and then the contract for two.
Yeah, in the name of.
Okay.
Yeah.
You could talk about the other exchange that you did where we became a single member.
The reason why it's bad, in a partnership LLC filing a 1065, right, where you have two partners, you can distribute a property out of the LLC and not pay. It's not a taxable event. The day you put a property in an S corp, puts a basis. And so if you have a property in the S corp for 10 years and it doubles in value, which it will, right? If you go and take that property, disperse it out of the S corp, deed it out. Even if you deed it out, there's a taxable event. And that's the issue with S corporations. And some people use them and they just leave them in there forever. The issues become, there's some issues when you die too that could be a problem as well. We have a couple of case studies we do in our groups about stuff like this, but if you can prevent it, you know, and if you got it in there, don't panic, don't leave here, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? It's just, you know, yeah, do not go deed it out. Yeah, and that's what, and it'll change taxpayers too, right? So the S corp is a taxpayer. Same taxpayer rule, remember, in 1031. So if we moved it into another LLC, it would have blown the same taxpayer rule. So we're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. And then there was another issue on the last exchange that we did where we had, Florida's kind of a strange state. There are 7 community property states. Arizona's one of them. California is another. So if I'm married, my wife and I, we can bounce in and out of title. It doesn't really matter. In some states, particularly as you go back east, a LLC with 2 married people is a partnership. Remember the same taxpayer rule, right? So if we start distributing property out of a LLC 1065 to a wife, it's not the same taxpayer. So it creates all kinds of weird dynamics with LLCs. And I guess my point is, you just want to think thoroughly about what you're putting a property into. And I'm worried about it. As the QI, I'm thinking about breaking the same taxpayer rule, right? I don't want ever to have a file audited and get blown up by the IRS and I didn't catch it. So when somebody says I have an LLC, I'm like, oh yeah, they're like, it's a Schedule C on the tax return. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I'm like, let me see the tax return, or let me see the partnership. And sometimes in a state they should be filing a 1065 partnership return, they're putting on a Schedule C, which they really shouldn't be doing, and those are greater issues. But I'm always really, I get down on a cellular level of these things just to make sure, you know, because sometimes clients just don't know. We're very sophisticated in this room. Like we pretty much know our entities, right, and how to take title, but that's not the average person. And our clients, our KW clients too, they don't really know. So I get really granular with it. So in this case, we just had some weird LLC, and then the replacement property was gonna go to a trust, and then the LLC owned it. So we ended up kind of cleaning it up, but there was like some minor issues there. So it wasn't a big deal, but we took care of it.
And you know, the bad part about this is like that S corp was from 15 plus years ago under bad advice from somebody else that we didn't know. So we had, I don't even know how many properties went through that thing. So
Yeah.
it was a mess.
And it's, if you're just selling it and you're going to pay the gain anywhere, it's not a big deal, right? It's when you go to exchange it or do something else. Yeah. I don't know. Did that answer your question, Tavis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Cool.
for sure.
Cool. Anybody else? Coming in hot.
Stressful.
Coming in hot.
Question, and it's not necessarily on the 1031 exchange itself, but the difference between the land contract and the contract for deed. Do you have any, because we do a lot of land contracts and we've done a portion of those, but we've always wanted our name on the deed. Do you, just because when you go to sell it, right, the original owner needs to be there to do the wet signature on that deed and the transfer? Like we've done a couple of flips where we've done contract for deed, but I knew it was gonna be short term. Do you have any like concerns there when you go to sell it later? Like if that owner passes away and now he can't, do you have to?
Yeah, I mean, if you could get the deed in your name 100% of the time, right? 100% of the time, get the deed in your name. There's some issues. Is there a loan on it?
Yeah.
Right? Would there be a due on sale clause if we trigger this? You guys all know the subject to guys, right?
Yep.
They're always worried about that, is the due on sale clause. So what you really want to do is, there's devices that you can record against the property, like an encumbrance on the property that there's an agreement, and get it recorded. So if you do a contract for deed, you're recording this memorandum, which basically ties up this property that has to be cleared. So the seller can't go behind your back and sell the property. Right? You want a memorandum. Bradley, is there any other thing else that you did to protect yourself on that?
We recorded the memorandum on it, so we're there. Also, the seller on it is younger than me, so
That's
in
good.
good health. So I felt comfortable with it, and where we're already occupying the property and doing everything, you know, the amount of money I put into it, I looked at it as I'm already there, you know, it's serving a purpose for our business. And if it did blow up, it's not a ton of money in it, right? And I'm going to cloud that title and he's going nowhere with it.
And I want to ask Brett. Brett, is there anything that you can think of from like this seller just dies, right? And we got a contract for deed. And,
That's what I wonder, because otherwise, don't you have to go through probate with that? Or?
I would get like, if you're doing subject to, I mean, or anything like that where it's in someone else's name, I get a specific power of attorney, right? Only that, like, I can manage that transaction, you know, because you're gonna have things that come up. But they're fraught with issues right here, so you just wanna make sure that you're protected. You could sign documents on that specific asset that you own. That would be where I would start, and then I would.
So you can actually get a power of attorney specific to that property, and it can be for the life
They
of
sign
the
an agreement, but it's the specific thing is I can transact, sell, handle this. I can sign documents on your behalf for this property.
this particular. That's a brilliant move.
And so
Brilliant
like,
move.
I would also say if you're doing this a great real estate attorney, because there might be something in some state that I just don't know, like your state or, you know, whatever. But I would also, you know, everyone we've just had someone bless it on the way out.
Yeah.
And you should always be prepared that if there is a loan you're taking over, like the due on sale clause is real. And I've had, as someone that had like 5 subject twos in my portfolio, I had all 5 blow up in the last 3 years. Not for anything I did. One seller called in and called the bank and said, well, she called me, said, I don't want this on my loan anymore, the loan in my name anymore. I said, I understand that, but that wasn't the deal we had.
Right.
Like, I'm happy to provide you documentation or whatever. She goes, I'm calling the bank and telling them that you committed mortgage fraud. I said, but I didn't, and you know that. Like, where are you being? So she called him up and said, refuse his payments. So I'm sending the payments in. The bank refused to accept my payment. Super cool.
Super spicy.
So then I said, whatever. So I had to pay it off. You know, I just said you paid it off, and no big deal. But like, so they're just understand parts of, you know, those that
What-
can happen. Be careful. Understand the risks. I mean, a lot of the people out there teaching subject to, and now if there's no mortgage. Oh, seller finance is the greatest tool ever. If there is a mortgage, you need to be careful and protected. But a specific power of attorney can help solve some of those documents. And like at the end, you're closing, and because going and finding that person in 15 years could be really, really hard.
We, the one thing I'll add to, Brett, is the point of going into a different state. If you're not familiar with that state and you go to another state, you better, because I'll give you an example. I was doing a deal in Louisiana, and I mentioned a tick, and the attorney's like, what the hell is that?
Why is that getting involved?
He's like, what are you talking about? And he goes, no, we don't have ticks down here. We have percentage of ownership on the deed manifestation. And I'm like, okay, you call it what you want. We're gonna do the tick your way. And so it's just like every state has a little nuance to it. So, and my point is, yeah, like get a counsel in that state. Yeah.
Cool.
Any other question?
Yeah, one more question. I'll go to.
All right. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm a little hot today. Coming in hot.
Just to make sure I understood properly, because a friend of mine had a similar situation with owning property in a subject to, and I'm in the S corp taxes and LLC taxes and S corp. So you exchanged out of it and did not incur any taxes as long as the replacement properties were owned by the S corp.
Yeah, exactly. So the issue with owning an S corp too is your bank going to finance you in the S corp loan in the S corp name, right? So if you're getting a loan, you're not going to go Fannie or Freddie, right? Because they're not going to allow that. So you got to get a commercial loan, and that's really the issue that comes up, right? Is I want to exchange. The bank goes, yeah, you're going to have to put that in your name. And so they want you to change the deed out of the name. Well, you can't because you're going to blow up the exchange. And so those are some of the nuances that happen.
We actually had that happen. We were, and that was one of the delays. The lender, I said, hey, it's in the corp. Here you go. Here's the contract. Here's everything. Well, they kept sending paperwork in my personal name. And the insurance company finally called me and goes, I don't know why they keep changing it. They keep telling me to put it in your name. And I looked at it. It was like 3 days before closing. I'm like, oh. So then we had to shop it. You know, the same lender outsourced the loan to another company and pulled it together in the corporate name. But, you know, we almost lost the deal, right? It was an identified property. I could have ended up losing out pretty big there.
DSCR products, they'll let you go into the company name, but it's an important nuance. You know, if you got one in there, just know what you're getting into. So Kendra's got it. Yeah.
All right, I just want to make sure I understand. All right, so I've got single family home I've owned for 20 years. It's in property address LLC.
Yep.
And I want to sell it and I want to 1031 exchange it. But I want to buy like another single family home, but I need to get a mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying it would have to be titled in the name of that LLC, but then I wouldn't be able to get like standard conventional financing in my name. I just want to make sure I understand. Is that what you're saying?
I think there's an important nuance, right? If you're wanting to, if the entity's disregarded for tax purposes on your Schedule C, you can bounce in and out of that all you want.
Okay, all right.
So Kendra's the taxpayer in that case, filing a Schedule C on her 1040 return. That can change. You know, you're going to have XYZ LLC, 123 LLC. And then you're probably going to open a new LLC for the new property.
Exactly.
As long
that's
as
what we
it's
do.
disregarded for tax purposes, you can bounce in and out all you want.
Okay.
The same thing with the S Corp. So the S Corp can have disregarded entities too, right? As long as they're disregarded to the S Corp.
Okay.
So the S Corp can have those. Partnerships can have those too, right? Your partnership can have 4 or 5 disregarded entities. But I'm always looking for like who does this go up to? And what,
I just want to make sure I understood.
Yep.
If I go and do that, then all of a sudden I'm like, shoot, I should have quit claimed that into my name before I sold it. That's not fun to find out a couple days before closing. So I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. And there are some like panicky people about disregarded entities. This is the issue I deal with all the time with CPAs. Like, you can't change the name. And it's like, yeah, they're just paranoid, right? Don't change the name. Same taxpayer. And the real interpretation is, as long as it's disregarded, you can change and bounce in and out all you want. I have exchange clients that will, large commercial buildings, they always change LLCs, because of the, they're exchanging in and out. So, but it's important nuance to know. It's disregarded, you could change entities all you want. So, cool. Got one more question over here. Awesome catch.
So can you just go back on the contract to deed? Is it contract for deed that stays in the seller's name? How can you 1031 exchange something when you're not on that final deed?
Yeah, so the contract for deed is the date of sale. Yeah, and so that's a great question. Like, we don't have the deed's not in your name. And so the litmus test, benefits and burdens of ownership, is what the IRS is looking for, is does it pass the benefits and burdens test? In all respects, it does. And that's why the deed can stay in their name. You're taking the depreciation, you're doing all of the benefits and burdens shift to the other party. So is it the cleanest way to sell a property? Absolutely not. If I could avoid it, we would. In this case, we couldn't. We tried. We were like, let's get the deed, and they just wouldn't go for it. But it is kind of a backdoor way to do it. Again, not ideal, but doable. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, guys. $2,000. Thanks, buddy.
What I would say is, as you're thinking about a 1031, go way in advance. Whatever you think you're about doing, get way, way further ahead of it. Thank you. Than you think. Get with Michael and ask questions, because each situation, every 1031 I've had that I thought this is going to be the easiest one to do, it's in an S corp. So I had one, and I know the S corp rule. The danger, right, Kendra, is you're in an S corp, you don't think like, oh, I need to refinance it. And if I'm doing conventional, I got to put it in my name. We all have dropped out of our name to go back in. We can't. In an S corp, I just taxed it right there. And so I have a business. Our hard money lending business is an S corp. I foreclosed on something in there. Now I've got a property in an S corp, which sucks. So had I done it differently, I would have, now knowing what I know, right, you could foreclose and not be in that entity. So point is, get with Michael or someone early on in your 1031, because you've got to start way, way, way early, and there's a lot of nuance in it. All right, who needs more leads for their investment business? Here, Joe, before I move on. I believe I could have actually, when I took title at foreclosure, when it went there, I could have took title in a different entity for that property. I think there's a way as you foreclose to name like the entity that foreclosed it could end up with it, and then it would have been outside. Because then I ended up making a lot of money on the foreclosure, kept it a year, then I exchanged it. So it's okay. I just have to be super cognizant of never, and if you do a loan, to Michael's point, the issue is I've got to do a commercial loan now that's in that entity. So it just creates like, you just limit your options, and it sounds like simple, but it's really easy to get a property in an S corp if you're not paying attention. Because you're just running, it's why your team matters, right? Like, so if I'm buying a property, I call the CPA, tax attorney, are we all in a line that this should go in here? Okay, we're cool.